Exodus, Stage Left, Part 1. Out of the Reeds. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along by the river's side. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." The Sands of Time. I'd missed my insertion again. If I'd landed 1 foot lower, I wouldn't be here to tell you the story. And it was hot. That was the first thing that struck me. I looked up at a scorching sun you could fry an egg on. Though actually you can't fry eggs on the sun. You couldn't even get eggs close to the sun. But that's another story. I look around, everything is white. White sand, lots of it. Just my damn head sticking out. The rest of me encased underneath. And there wasn't any running water down there because my legs would have been cooler. And I could have moved my legs, kicked my legs around if there was water, right? But how could sand be on top of water anyway? That's impossible. Except on Esophagus 9 in Galaxy 334A, where all that styro sand has been floating on the petroleum oceans ever since the great unsuccessful cleanup of 2487. Suddenly, I heard footsteps on the sand. Well, more like scrunches, really. Someone was approaching from behind the sand dune on my left. It was a woman, stunning in a vivid green sheath dress, her legs like the pillars of Xerxes, her skin the color of a Starbucks caramel macchiato. "Hey, will you get me out of here?" I screamed in ancient Egyptian with my last ounce of strength. She ran to me, knelt down, and began scrabbling at the sand. It was hard work, but soon my arms were free, and we began both scrabbling together, and I do not mean we were playing a board game with little wooden squares that make words. No, we were digging me out of the sands. At last, I was free. We stared into each other's eyes, lost in the mystery of the moment. "Need water," I rasped, brushing the sand from my clothes. The woman pointed behind her, beyond a sand dune, and headed that way. We labored up the incline, our feet sinking into the loose sand at every step, until at last, atop the dune, an unimaginable panorama spread out before me. There, across a huge green river, a city of white and ochre buildings stretched to the horizon. Imposing temples and obelisks rose up in its midst, and in the distance, 3 monumental pyramids stood against the azure sky. Pi Ramses. A segment of my memory clicked in. This city that would not be called Cairo for another 2,000 years. And the Nile. The eternal Nile was close at hand. I staggered down a sandy incline to the shore and waded in, falling to my knees, cupping my hands to bring the waters to my parched lips. Sated, I sat there in the shallows, exulting in the cool current lapping at my body. The woman's voice came from just behind me. "Who are you, strange wayfarer, and who was it buried you thus?" "I am called Oshalim," popped up from my installed memory. My brain's contents seemed to be on a need-to-know basis. "One who helps others," the woman said, smiling, her teeth as brilliantly white as the sands, but less granular. "Why am I here?" I looked down at my side. Perhaps the contents of my finely made leather pouch will explain better than my own poor word. I raised the flap of the pouch and pulled out a yellow parchment covered with strange symbols. It was Greek to me, but what with the desert and the Nile and the pyramids, it just didn't add up. I figured it must be Egyptian. "To tell the truth, I cannot read your script," I said, and handed it to her. She looked it over and seemed impressed. Her face reddened, and she performed a ceremonious bow before me. I liked that. "Oshalim Limu, you are come from Assur to treat with our great king whose name I cannot speak." I tried to remember. Assur was the Assyrian capital, and Limu was an official of some kind, a very high one. "I am in your service," she said. Suddenly, a rapid, rhythmic splashing sound came from my left. Before I could even think, 2 crocodiles were on me. Still on my knees, I stopped the first with a hard jab to his snout, then followed it with an uppercut that nearly flipped him over backward. But his huge tail flexed off the riverbed and he was in my face again. "More! You want more?" I shouted, battle lust now coursing through my veins. He opened his big mouth and I gave him my right cross. It cost him a few teeth. He was done, turning tail, so to speak, and slithering back into the Nile. I looked at the other croc and saw fear in his eyes. "You want a piece of me too?" I asked. The big guy seemed to shrug his shoulders, not an easy thing for a crocodile, and slipped back toward deeper waters and easier prey. Perusing the palace. "Let us approach the throne, then. The great king whose name I cannot speak awaits you." So Sahad and I followed Mr. Hassier toward the throne where the pharaoh sat in all his splendor. He had gotten himself a big mango. With one hand he was taking bites from it, the juice dripping from his chin and down his arms. In the other hand, he held a golden scepter with a falcon's head on it. I followed Suhad's lead and prostrated myself before the king. He spoke. "We welcome you, Limmer, noble leader of our Assyrian neighbors. We wish you well and safer journeys than the one you have just taken. You may rise." It occurred to me that Ramses might be from the southern part of Egypt. "We have sent soldiers to search for these bandits. Perhaps they will recover the gifts you lost. But it is no great matter, Limmer. You can see the unparalleled glory which surrounds me. All the same, tell your king upon your return to Assur to send me twice as much gold as he did this time." "It will be done, great king." I bowed low and reminded myself to stay the hell out of Assyria. Now Ramses turned to my beautiful companion. "Suhad, we thank you for rescuing our visitor from the sands. Amun-Ra placed you there in his wisdom." "It was my good fortune, great king. He is very brave and fought both river beasts and attacking bandits in my presence." "Yes, we know of his bravery." Then Ramses turned back to me with an unsmiling face. "And yet it is said," he paused for a long moment, "that you refer to me as Mr. Big?" A chill ran down my spine. I felt like I'd gone over Victoria Falls in a papyrus bucket, or like the crocodile had come back with 12 of his buddies. Ramses seemed to swell in size and loom over me like Horus the falcon god himself. "Well, your majesty, that is, I... Silence!" Ramses' voice became low and harsh and rasping. "Do you not know that the eye of the pharaoh is everywhere, that nothing is unseen to me? All things are visible to Horus, Lord of the skies. Tremble before my infinite power, you lowly ant." I felt the best thing at that point was more prostration. I hoped all the prostration wouldn't damage my prostate, but I had to take the chance. Suhad bowed too, but I don't think women have those anyway. The two of us said nothing. Silence fell over the room. "Mr. Big, you say? Mr. Big." He paused for another endless moment. "You know, I kind of like it. After all, I am big. I'm the biggest. How about Mr. Biggest? No, that doesn't have the same ring. Mr. Big, that's the one. Rise again to your feet, my vassals, and fear not the wrath of your king." He stood up from his throne and raised his scepter. "Hear now my words," he roared. "I grow tired of hearing a great king whose name I cannot speak every day. I mean, if you say that, that's my name, right? So you say my name anyway. What's the point? And it's too long. It makes me crazy. Let it be known throughout the palace that all shall henceforth call me Mr. Big. Mr. Big. Much easier. But write not this appellation in stone, for it is not befitting that future generations know of it. It's just for around the palace, okay?" But now Suhad drew close and whispered to me. "That is the man of whom I spoke. You can see who he is now. He is a prince of all Egypt, a son of Queen Tuya, as is Ramses." That's when it hit me. Now I remembered why I'd been sent to ancient Egypt. It wasn't about Ramses. It was about this guy. This was the young Moses in front of me, the founder of Judaism as we know it. You see, it's like this. Back in the 26th century, our alien overlords, the Grolnothians, wanted more data on the history of humanity and the effects of religion. What was with all the violence, they wondered? The Crusades and the religious wars in Europe and India and the Aztecs and, well, just about everywhere. No wonder I'd repressed the memory. This was too big for anyone. "Would you like me to introduce you?" Suhad finally asked. "Sure, why not?" I said, trying to appear casual. Moses seemed startled when we walked over, then, recognizing Suhad, he accepted her introduction of me. "So, Limu," he said, letting out a chuckle, "you are the creator of Mr. Big. That was quite a coup. You must be likable, and certainly fortunate. But you must realize now that the king's spies are everywhere." The sound of his Egyptian sounded unusual even to my novice ears. I couldn't help asking, "The sound of your Egyptian sounds unusual, my lord. May I ask of its origins?" "Certainly. In my youth I wandered into the great northern wilderness and sojourned there for several years. I discovered an island there with a most charming race of people who served me a hot brown drink and fish with potatoes. Their elegant ways of speech seem to have influenced me to this day." "Okay, I understand, great prince," I said. "And, well, thank you for your friendly greeting after our awkward exit from the imperial presence."
"Oh, I've experienced such things before."
"How can you satisfy the expectations of someone with supreme power? He is, after all, a god and knows all things." I sensed something mocking, even sardonic in his tone. I liked that. I stared into her eyes, stunned. She laughed mischievously.
"Yes, I can read your mind, Legion Ayers. There is little about you I do not know, except perhaps where you got that silly name. But this night is not as long as I wanted it to be, and we may not have another like it. Come, let us play the eternal game."
Then she took my hand and put it upon her exquisite breast and moved her own fingers, centimeter by aching centimeter, toward the center of my rampant ardor. Indeed, my ardor was definitely ramping. But I retained enough sanity to realize my cover was completely blown. She knew who I was. She could even read my mind. There were secrets here beyond my 26th century understanding. Could she possess me? Control me as well? She was certainly controlling the raging center of my passion now, with astonishing skill, and these thoughts pulsing through my mind gradually faded. I succumbed to her ministrations, and I did trust her, strangely. "We need to talk," I mumbled, as our bodies cleaved together and my fingers finally found the syrupy fig Newton between her limbs.
"What's with you and figs?"
she whispered into my ear, her breath quickening. This was beyond belief. She knew every thought that crossed my mind. "Well, figs are the fruit of the gods," I ad-libbed, "and so in my arms are you."
"You see me as a fruit?"
she panted, her fingernails digging into my back. No, I said, "it's just a figure of speech." I probed her inner sweetness, and she thrust against me like a wild panther.
"Panthers don't thrust,"
she moaned.
"They creep, they pounce, they bite. I've never heard of them thrusting. I suppose the male must do some thrusting, but are you saying I'm acting as a male?"
"Oh, no, you're thrusting. It's very feminine. I just..."
"Look, you need to stop this inner narrative you have going on. It sounds like you're writing a book. This time travel business must be throwing you off. Just relax and look into my eyes."
And I did. That's the last thing I remember, except for an experience of physical ecstasy beyond anything I'd ever known. But when I awoke at dawn, my entire being still tingling from pleasure, I was alone again.